So welcome to Theatre 2, everybody. My name is Anra Kennedy and I will be hosting today. I am a consultant director at Audience Agency. Some of you'll know me from Culture 24. And we've merged with the Audience Agency now, but I'm delighted to be here hosting for you today. So we've got a really fantastic programme lined up for you. A couple of housekeeping things. We just did that sound check. We've got these great new earpieces to help with the audio is often challenging in here. So hopefully everyone is hearing us fine. Give Boo or Esther a wave if you're having any trouble with those. The other thing to say is that we are recording all of these talks and you won't be on camera, so it's only our speakers on camera. All of the recordings will go up on the Museums and Heritage Show website. We have to give them a little bit of time to edit those and get those up, but in a few weeks' time, they'll be up on the website. So we've got two brilliant speakers to kick us off. So Eleanor Hilton is joining us from the National Portrait Gallery, and Anna Husband is also here with her. They're going to be talking about their new schools hub. They're going to take turns. They're going to tell us about it, and then there is going to be time for Q&A afterwards. So think up your questions, and I'm going to hand over to Eleanor. Thank you.
Lovely. Hello, everybody. I'm Eleanor. Lovely to see you all here. Thank you so much for coming. As it says up on here, I'm the Digital Learning Manager for Schools Hub. So I'm going to be telling you a few things about the project as a whole. I'm going to share a few bits about our development process, about our research that went into it, our audience research, some of the challenges and lessons learned, which I hope will be useful, and some top tips at the end. Okay. So starting off, just for anybody who doesn't know, what is Schools Hub? Great. Very pleased that our video is working. So that's our trailer, gives you a flavour of Schools Hub and what it is we're talking about here today. Schools Hub is part of a wider project, the Inspiring People project, which is the new National Portrait Gallery. So just a little outline of that for anybody who might not have visited us, but it's been a really big project that's involved a significantly refurbished building, a brand new entrance and forecourt, and we have a new learning centre as well. And at the heart, we do have a completely redisplayed portrait collection. Much more representative of modern Britain. So, for example, the number of women sitters and artists has considerably increased as well. But more on that, I think, later. Okay, so alongside the physical transformation of the gallery, we also have a completely transformed public programme as well. And that focuses on all sorts of different audiences. So we're obviously talking about schools here today, but I want to give a shout out to my colleagues who have an amazing youth programme, adult programme and events, and family programme as well. So lots and lots going on at the gallery. Schools Hub is the digital strand of the new schools programme, and it's been designed to support teaching and learning of art and design and history for schools studying those topics. It's big. We launched in September last year with about 150 resources, and we're still continuing to add as well. I think last time I checked, we're now at 179. I think we're about to tip over into 180. All of these have been specially commissioned, and they're learning resources, videos, and they're for school students across the UK, across age ranges, key stages 1 to 5, all developed by and with historians, artists, and education experts. So it aims to enable learning through portraiture in ways that the gallery has never been able to do before, reaching new school audiences across the country and beyond. So there's a bit of a flavour of some of the resources there, but I won't linger on that because we'll come back to that later. But as an overview, We do have a core of about 100 portrait resources that offer a detailed exploration of individual curriculum-linked topics. That video is not quite working, so I'll go back to that one. Within the national curriculum through portraits from our collection. So we have lots of videos as well. We can see some stills from those in there too, which you'll also have seen in the trailer that we had. And we also have a portal for booking our programme of on-site learning sessions as well. We also have, which you can't see because the video isn't working, but you can filter all of our resources by different types, audiences, and so on and so forth. So really user-focused kind of portal that we've created there. So, audience first. This is absolutely crucial to the development of Schools Hub. Okay, so the target audiences. So schools, of course, but what does that mean? There isn't a homogenous schools audience. You need to break that down. So we have secondary school history, secondary school art and design, and then primary as well, cross-curricular, of course, and then teachers as well as our secondary audience there. Okay, it's really important that what we're developing meets their needs. So it's really important that we spend time trying to work out what those needs are. So a large part of our the beginning of our project was about really digging into this. Okay, we spent lots of time trying to really dig in. What do they really need and want? And I can't stress this enough. You just can't know enough about your target audiences. I'm a qualified teacher. You know, I think it's tempting to think that you know your audience really, really well as a teacher. However, I would never presume that. It's something that changes all the time. The challenges change, and it's really important that you keep kind of plugged into that. So our target question, our key question for our research was this: what do schools really need and want? And we broke this down into a number of sub-questions, which you can see on here. So how do teachers find and use resources, some of the technical aspects? What does good digital learning practice look like? Not just what we think it looks like, but what our audiences think it looks like. And believe me, that can be really revealing. What are the potential barriers and how can you remove those? Little frustrations can absolutely derail your project if you're not really listening to what those barriers are and really trying to address them. What are the preferred resource formats? And this is something that's shifted as well with technological changes. What topics are being taught in schools? Not just what's in the curriculum, but actually what's being taught in schools. And from there, really looking at how you can link your collections to the national curriculum. And basically, that last one, I think, is a really important one, because it's not just what teachers are teaching, but where are they looking for support? Where is it that they are looking to find new resources? So you can find out the answers in lots of different ways. I could spend a long time talking about our research methods, but as an overview, we did a lot of front-end research, talking to other people who've done this kind of stuff recently, learning from them. That's a really valuable tool. Consultation and surveys with teachers, of course. Expert input from learning and digital advisors, and I'll come back to that one as well. And then testing at every point throughout the process, really talking to people, really testing, really listening to what they're saying, and being prepared to pivot your project around that as well. Really, really important. So what did we find out? Loads and loads and loads, but this one slide here will just give you a kind of overview. So like most of the visitors to our website, most of our audiences are looking for access to our collections and the expertise we have about those collections. That is our USP. We need to design around that. All our resources need to be relevant, practical, flexible, and accessible. Curriculum link. For schools, this is everything. If it's not in the curriculum, they won't have time to teach it. So as wonderful as it might sound, it's not really worth your time to develop things that aren't going to be used. Right, curriculum linked is everything. Simple, insightful text, making sure it's as accessible as possible. High quality images. Again, that's about as an art gallery, our visual resources are really important. Short videos. Teachers saying they want videos, but if they're too long, anything over 5 minutes, they're just not going to watch it. They're often being used as introductions to topics, things like that. And then the expert how-to guidance. And that really speaks to that idea about why are they reaching out? Where is it that they need that support? So, content development. So we started off by doing a large piece of content mapping, looking at what's in the curriculum and where we might be able to deliver content that meets that curriculum need. So some flavours of portraits that we've been working with for our resources just here. But more than that, again, speaking to where teachers are looking for support, we were looking at areas that particular topics that teachers were reaching out for, particularly things like empire, migration, growing areas of the curriculum where teachers are potentially teaching things that weren't part of their own education. So they're having to kind of upskill themselves whilst trying to deliver new topics. So it was really important for us to try and work out where we're really lucky, we've got a strong collection in this area, and we were able to build resources around that. So our offer is unapologetically skewed towards these topics. And then what we did as well, we built in a very strong review process for this content. Once we decided what we were going to deliver, we built a very large team of and structure of research, of review for content, for learning pedagogy, for all sorts of different other areas to make sure that we were producing a really high quality product that our audiences could really trust. And again, I can't emphasize that one enough. I would say that building trust with your audiences, that they can come to you and that they know that what they're going to get is reliable. They're not going to need to fact check you, that you can be their first port of call. That is really, really important. So really fact checking what you've got. And I'll talk about this a little bit more in a second, but obviously we have internal help with that, but also, reaching out to external content experts as well to help you do this. So this point is something that I wanted to emphasize, is integrated content and technical development. So obviously we were developing a new area of our website. So there's technical elements to that too. It's really important that these two things go hand in hand. Often what you find is that people trying to produce learning resources are trying to do this within a web context that's already fixed. The content blocks already exist, and they're trying to crowbar their learning into a website that isn't really built for that. It's built for the needs of a general user, but the needs of learners are different. So if at all possible, I would really try and encourage you, if this isn't your gift, to try and work out a project structure that allows you just a little bit of flex on this. It's challenging, okay? And I know that we don't all have that control. One of the things I would say is that, often what happens is that the people who hold the expertise about learners and the people who hold the expertise about technical aren't necessarily the same people. And therefore, the communication between those two sides needs to be really strong. So yeah, having a project structure that helps with that is really important. And so, for example, my role, I sit in the learning and engagement team. I'm a digital learning manager, but I have a dotted line into digital and very much straddle those two teams. And I thought that was really, really important because then it did allow us to then really assess the functionality that was available to us, identify the gaps that we had, and then kind of build around that. We didn't really do anything that fancy. We didn't have a huge budget in terms of technical side of things. So what we designed wasn't particularly fancy, but what we did aim to do was design functionality that supports learning, have an intuitive navigation, and make sure that our pages were as easily scannable and usable as possible. Let's see if this one works. Oh, this one's working. Great. So we did have some new elements that we produced as part of developing Schools Hub. So the one I think that's about to show here is our accordion menus. So again, nothing fancy here, but what we were trying to do here was be able to kind of meet the need of teachers, that they wanted to have a way of sharing questions with their students, but they also wanted some support on how to answer those questions. So they're not expected to be the oracle who knows all. So we're building into the resources that kind of structured support. And on this one, so we have a sticky menu at the side here. So as you scroll down the page, the menu stays the same on the side. And this is about helping to aid navigation through the resource. Really simple stuff, quite easy to do, but something that came through very strongly in the research, just making sure that what's on this page, how can I work out what's right for me, what I'm going to need to use? Because teachers tend to pick and choose what they're going to use. They don't tend to necessarily use it all as a whole. And that's part of that bite-sized flexible resource model. So building a great team probably goes without saying, but I do want to emphasize this because Schools Hub could not have been done without the amazing team that we built. And that's not just internal. Obviously, it is, my internal colleagues. The learning and engagement team, amazing. The digital team, amazing. Curatorial, the support that we got, amazing. But also we reached out beyond the gallery. We worked with more than 40 different external contributors, writers, editors, filmmakers, a specialist developer who we brought in, and all sorts of other people, particularly lots of content experts as well. We also worked with an amazing group of critical friends who helped steer us along the way, some of whom are in the room today. It's nice to see. So Anra, who is our host today, was one of our critical friends. Really, I would really strongly advise that. Someone who, building a group of people who can tell you at particular points of decision whether you're on the right track or not, and just be really honest with you about like which direction you're going in, helps you avoid making potentially expensive mistakes. So a list of some of the key people involved here. Obviously, with so many involved, I can't name them all. But yeah, some of the key ones in terms of our contractors. We work with a specialist children's media production company, Three Arrows Media, who do a lot of work with the BBC, doing CBBC and things like that. And then Maple Design, who are specialists in our back end of our website and ModX. And then some of the resources writers and content advisors on the right there, who were particularly, brought particular expertise to the project, although many more. I couldn't list them all, as you can see. I ran out of space. And then moving on to creating the resources, I'm going to hand over to Anna, who worked with us as a content producer, and will be able to take you through that. Thank you.
Thank you, Eleanor. Can I just check everyone can hear me okay? Good. All right, lovely. So I'm Anna Husband. I'm a museum and gallery consultant, and I'm currently working with the gallery to implement and develop their school strategy following its reopening last year. And what I'm going to do is just take a few minutes to drill down a little bit further into how we applied all of that rigorous research that Eleanor's been speaking about to create the resources. I'd also like to say how lovely it is to see everybody. It's great to have such a packed room, and also to see some familiar faces. So thank you all for coming. Okay, so to briefly recap then, the research provided us with this really detailed and nuanced picture, which was so important, of what both teachers need and want, and what we at the gallery are best placed to deliver through Schools Hub. So in a very, very brief nutshell, just to review, this included, well, surprise, portraits, but more specifically, it was about our USP as home to the world's most extensive collection of portraits. They wanted to see this wide range of artists, sitters, genres, time periods, all represented of their own diverse cohorts of students, and to include a mix of known and less well-known portraits. And as Eleanor said, they wanted resources that were curriculum linked. So tallying this with the strength of our collections meant a focus on these two curriculum strands. And we're quite strict about that: art and design and history. I mean, arguably we could support all kinds of areas of the curriculum, but this is where our collection really shines. And we've focused on these two strands. And they wanted expertise. So for art and design, particularly in areas where they felt less confident, these are the two sort of key bits that we picked up from them, and particularly around these sort of current issues and contemporary topics. And similarly for history, areas where they were less confident, thinking about those sensitive and challenging histories. And perhaps most importantly of all, for the resources to be accessible, bite-sized, and student-focused. So from this, we developed these three key formats, as Eleanor has mentioned. And just to kind of recap, these are themed resources. So these facilitate kind of deep dives into the key curriculum relevant content themes through a whole range of portraits, and they focus on this kind of active learning and questioning. The second one is what we call portrait resources. So these are a bit shorter, more focused, exploring and unpacking individual portraits in detail, and then videos, as Eleanor has said. So another really important bedrock to developing our resources was what we call our portrait pedagogy. We developed distinct pedagogies for using portraits for teaching and learning in art and design and in history across the key stages. And put very, very simply, it kind of boils down to this. So for art and design, it begins with getting the students to look really closely. This is a deceptively important skill. Learning to look closely is kind of the key to absolutely everything. We have games and all sorts of things on the website to help them do that properly. And then we go a little bit further and we get them to unpick the different portrait elements, thinking about things like clothes, hairstyle, objects, background. What can these things tell us about the mood, message, story, or feeling of the portrait? And then also for art and design students, really important to think about those formal elements. So how is colour, for contributing to that message? And then for history, and then for art and design, we do continue a little bit further, try and broaden it out a little bit, and perhaps most importantly, ask students about how it might inspire their own work. And then history is similar, but this time it's more of an focus on inquiry skills. So this is all about using portraits as a historical Oh God, I'll start that again. Using portraits as a historical source, not a historical exhaust. So we get them to look closely and then think about what they can infer from those different portrait elements, think about materiality and size, and then think about the kind of context, who made it and why, what's missing, whose stories are missing, what voices are missing, what further questions do you have, where might you go to find them out, how might portraits help you find this a bit more out. So that's a very, very kind of boiled down version of our pedagogy, but I thought might be useful to show you an example. And this, I'm the less technical one of the two of us, so I've done it with good old-fashioned screenshots. So here's an example of this pedagogy in action in one of our portrait resources. This one's of Zadie Smith, as you can see. So let's have a go. This is where we have a little tiny bit of audience participation. So take a really close look at this portrait. And while you're looking, I'll tell you a little bit about Zadie Smith from the introduction in the resource. So for those who haven't come across her before, Zadie Smith was born in 1975. She's a prize-winning writer of novels, short stories and essays. She's a professor of fiction at New York University, and her writing often refers to events in politics, culture, and deals with issues relating to identity and belonging, sometimes reflecting her own life. She was born in London to a Jamaican mother and English father. She was given the name Sadie, but changed her name to Zadie when she was 14. So there's just a little snapshot. So how did you get on? I wonder what you noticed, whether you've got any questions, whether you're wondering about any of the elements like her clothes, the background, the colours, the medium that she's used. And then what happens next is the resource takes students through a much deeper analysis of the portrait. And I'm not going to go through every single question, but just some sort of examples looking at the first sort of couple. So there we have one thinking about her pose and expression, what her clothes tell us about her. And I love this idea of, her boots and cape making her seem a bit kind of like a superhero. The artist is a real fan of hers and this really shines through. And then thinking about some of the other clues. And this is something I love particularly about this one, how she's integrated the background. So we have on the right-hand side is a kind of a map of Brent, and on the left-hand side is a reflection of her mother's heritage. So there's all sorts of stuff going on in that portrait, and we can unpick it. And there are other things. So you can have a look on your phone, search it on Schools Hub, and you'll find out an awful lot more. But I can see time is ticking on, so I'm going to move on. Okay, so then further down in the resource, we think a little bit about the context. We think about the background of the artist, the sitter, why the portrait was made, who it might have been made for, and any other relevant information. And you'll see there, I don't know if you can see it on the screen. Can you see there are kind of a few words underlined in yellow? This is our glossary function. So if you pop up on that, you get a very sort of concise example of what that word means in this context. Is all part of trying to make sure it's really accessible for students. And we spend quite a long time on those, don't we, Eleanor? Quite a long time. Okay. And then students are encouraged to think a little further and consolidate their learning through a set of questions. For art and design focused portraits like this one, we always encourage students to relate what they've discovered about the portrait to their own work. And the key thing, of course, is that what we're doing is we're unlocking the portrait's secrets, which is what teachers really kind of told us they really wanted. And we're helping students to develop their own skills to do this for themselves. And then finally, at the end, students are encouraged to explore further through other related resources. Okay, so that's a whistle-stop tour through one of our, 179 resources. So do take time to have a browse outside of this session. So then, as well as portrait pedagogy, learning objectives were absolutely crucial. As learning people, everything we do starts with learning objectives. And we created a set of overarching learning objectives for the resources. And there are a few examples here, just to kind of give you a flavour. And we use these to create specific learning objectives, skills, knowledge, and understanding for each and every learning resource and video. And actually, If you've ever tried to do this, it's deceptively difficult to pin those down. This was essential in ensuring a clear learning journey for our users from beginning to end. And they also help users see immediately whether or not the resource is going to be useful for them or not. So here's one for Lucy. Hope you're paying attention at the back. So language and tone of voice was also really important. And a key challenge was to ensure that language was student focused. That's a very, very big deal for us on Schools Hub in both tone and pitch. Nothing too complex, but not dumbing down either. So a writing guide was crucial, both in nailing down our approach and ensuring consistency across our pool of writers. So if you can kind of see in this example, our writing guide stipulated the use of short sentences as a key element. And it's kind of odd, this can sometimes appear a little stilted to our adult eyes, but it's an essential tool in making sure that, that things can be clearly understood. And you can see it reflected, particularly if you've had a moment to kind of look at the blurb underneath the wonderful Judith Kerr portrait there, which is one of my favourites, I have to say. Kind of work on the principle of no more than 2 facts or ideas per sentence. And then going back to our pedagogy, another key challenge in creating student-focused rather than teacher-focused resources was catering for all the different learning needs and levels in any one key stage. And that's a real kind of perennial problem, I think, for us in museums and galleries. So the pedagogical approach we developed allowed us to be kind of relatively open-ended. We could invite and guide students to explore portraits at their own level, and then they could differentiate by outcome. Another really important thing is we made sure resources included no assumed knowledge at all, and that they didn't rely on any additional information or materials. Everything is contained in the resource itself, so you don't have to click away from the site and come back again. A template with clear headings and word counts can be very useful, a really good tip for planning and writing. Here's one we use for the individual portrait resources, which is mapped against the different concept blocks we use to create them. And you can see in green some of our little notes that we've created along the way. And for videos, we worked in a similar way. So in summary then, in creating the resources, these are our top tips: a clear pedagogy, specific learning objectives that think about skills, knowledge and understanding, a writing guide so that you can make sure your language is student focused and consistent. Clear learning journey is absolutely essential. Is it doing what you said it's going to do? No assumed knowledge, no additional materials, concise word counts, another massive challenge, and a template can help. And we did a kind of similar thing with our videos. Although we worked with an external company, we were very careful to make sure we had our learning objectives and our learning journey and everything else mapped out. So very, very briefly then, Schools Hub doesn't sit on its own. It's part of a wraparound offer. It's got 2 key jobs to do. It needs to make our diverse collection available and accessible to schools right across the UK, because we are a national institution, and it needs to support our more local schools with pre and post visit materials. So throughout the development process, we were consistently aware of where a learning opportunity might be best delivered. Was it via Schools Hub? Would it be better delivered on site? And there isn't time to go into detail about this now, but it's really useful to create criteria for all your different learning modes, so you can be really sure you're making best use of them. And this is just a little example. If you put in the search term migration, you can see some of the different areas that we cover that, either on Schools Hub or in the museum. So very finally then, in absolute final summary, these are the top tips that we'd leave you with. Audience first approach. Ask your audience, test. Make data-driven decisions based on what they tell you. Build a great team. Ours is extensive and far-reaching, and we've all learned a huge amount on the way. Integrate content and technical development. Try and do that at the same time. Shoehorning one into the other is difficult. And ensure you have a robust content development process, as we've just outlined. And I think that's it. Thank you very much. And we'd love some questions if you have any.
Oh, thank you so much, both of you. I'm going to scoot over here. That was fantastic. So much detail. Right. Anyone got a question? I'll come to you with the mic. Great. If you could please just say your name and where you're from. And
Hi, my name is Laura Chesover. I'm from the British Library. I might have missed this, but could you just talk a little bit about how you engage teachers for consultation with this?
Yeah, I kind of did skip over that a little bit, didn't I? Yeah, so in lots of different ways. So let me go backwards a little bit. I think timing of when you consult the teachers is really important. I think working out exactly what you're asking of them and not having really broad, open-ended questions will help you get the most out of that engagement with them. So we did this kind of our first really big. We worked with our critical friends very early on, and some of our expert teachers who kind of gave us some kind of worked with us on our front end research. But then once we'd got together an idea of a few different ways that we wanted to, we potentially wanted to build Schools Hub, we then tested those with teachers. So we did that in a few different ways. We have a cluster of different teacher panels, which we could do kind of very in-depth qualitative kind of research with. But we also had, I think it was 2 really big surveys that went out quite early on. One about methods and one about topics. And with those ones, that was about kind of testing those ideas a bit further, and really kind of making sure that we weren't, that we were getting the breadth that we, the representation amongst the teacher cohort. And those ones, it was kind of very much asking them to, rather than open any questions, kind of, this is what we're going to do, what do you think? And asking them to kind of test our ideas and say what they liked and what they didn't, but using scoring, things like that. There were various other points as well. So on the technical side, we had various user testing elements that went with the technical side, again, working with kind of representative samples. We built quite a big network of teachers who wanted to work with us in different ways, so dipping in and out of them. Yeah, I can talk to you in at length in other ways, but maybe that's enough for now. Thanks.
Thank you. Great question. Here we go.
Hey there, I'm Lizzie. Oh, hi, I'm Lizzie. I'm from the Royal Zoological Society of Scotland. I was just wondering how teachers access your platform. Is it free and do they have to log in and those sorts of things?
Yeah, it's absolutely free. It's part of our website. So it's a new area of the website, and actually has a slightly different back end I don't know if you're more technical or, but yeah, so we were able to build a slightly different kind of portal, but from the front end, for the user perspective, it's a seamless part of the website, absolutely free to access. And I have worked on projects like this before where we have had a login before. In my opinion, that introduces a lot of barriers and horrible GDPR elements as well that are best avoided if you possibly can. So I personally am a strong advocate for free, easy access as far as possible.
Thank you. Any other, just while people are thinking, I'm going to ask a quick question. Now that Schools Hub is live, I know something a lot of museums and galleries, heritage sites struggle with is measures of success digitally. So could you just talk a little bit about which key KPIs, key performance indicators, what measures are you tracking now that it's live in terms of engagement?
Yeah, it's a really important one, and one that is one that I think obviously we had an evaluation plan that we set up right at the beginning, and I do encourage that as well, is that the learning objectives and the project objectives, setting those out really clearly, but at the time that you're doing that, setting up how you're going to measure that, how are you going to work out whether you've actually been successful. So we have a really extensive evaluation plan that measures all of our different KPIs in lots of different ways. So we have Google Analytics, of course, which kind of measures our basic engagement data, and tells us where people are coming from and how they're finding us, doing things like making sure that our SEO is working. We also we do lots of user testing as well. So I think Alex is somewhere in here, who's from a company one further we're working with, who've just done some our latest round of user testing, which I'm really excited just getting the reports through, which is helping us to kind of which is measuring against a lot of those KPIs as well, which is really valuable, getting it externally done, so that you're not marking your own work. I think that's quite important. Of course, reaching out to teachers as well. So we've got another piece of impact evaluation that's in the pipeline. I think it's important with some of this stuff. Obviously, we're monitoring as we're going, but I think it's worth leaving things to bed in for a while before you you do some of this stuff. So although we've been live since September, the impact evaluation, is still to come. But that's really talking to teachers who are using it, who are visiting, and not just the bounce of the excitement of launch, but actually looking at how that's working in the longer term as well. So yeah, there's lots of different strands of how we're measuring, which we fine tune as well as we go. So for example, we use Looker Studio for our Google Analytics. We set up a dashboard that helps us manage our data analytics, but we've actually just been fine tuning that and pulling in different elements to kind of help us to kind of fine tune it. There's a bit of guesswork involved at the beginning to make are you collecting the right data, and it's worth revisiting that and fine tuning as you go. Does that cover that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very early days because you've only just launched, but I think it's something that as the site beds in and you work with people like One Further, it'll be really interesting for the sector to start sort of finding out more about which of those measurements turn out to be the ones that really matter to you.
Yeah.
Is it length of time people watch your videos, or is it how many times people watch your video? All of that sort of granular detail is something a lot of us are struggling with.
Yeah, and I would say as well with digital products is that there's also the added challenge of things like, yes, you can monitor, who's looking at your site and how long they're spending on it, which of course we do monitor. But because we know that teachers are using our resources in lots of different ways, and many of them are using them on screen in the classroom. So there's a lot of hidden users behind the data as well that's really hard to measure. We're hoping our impact data is going to help us to kind of pull that in a bit more. But, it's an imperfect science, a bit of a black art, I would say. But we're doing our best to try and sharpen it up as we go.
Yeah, no, it's great. Yes.
Hi, thanks so much for that. It was really, really interesting. So I'm Becca, I'm from the UK Parliament. And I was just wondering, you mentioned that this is part of your wraparound schools offer. And I just wondered if you could tell us a bit more about the other aspects of your school offer, particularly whether you do anything digital that's sort of live and live events for young people, as well as online resources. Thank you.
Thanks. I can speak a little. Oh, I need to take this out. This is very strange. I can speak a little bit about it, but actually, you've kind of hit something right on the nose. We're at the point of doing that at the moment. So at the moment, so we've been open since June last year. So we're still kind of developing. Our key offer is our on-site kind of live offer. Come and visit the gallery. We have facilitated sessions, usually facilitated by an artist educator if it's an art focused one, or a historian educator if it's a history focused one. We have a self-led offer and so on, but we are thinking very, very carefully now about our digital offer and how we can expand that nationally through digital. And I wish that I could say a little bit more and give you some more insights. There are other museums and galleries, I think, who are at a different stage to us, but we're taking it in exactly the same way as Eleanor described with Schools Hub. We're doing a lot of research. We're consulting with an external company to help us with it. We're going to test it with teachers. We're at the point where we've proposed 4 different modes, and I'm trying to think what they are. And one is a kind of broadcast mode, this idea of do it once, show it lots of times. Another mode, which is about kind of clipping and creating lots of different snippets from our different programs to kind of package up in a way that might use for teachers. We're thinking about, hopefully without any kind of login or password, we're thinking about almost like a sort of membership idea, so that we can have teachers who engage with us more deeply and also help us to deliver and shape and hone the program. So that's where our thinking is going at the moment. And our next stage, which I'm very excited about, is to have a kind of play and prototype session. So we've got ideas about what we might want to do and what the kit might be, and we're going to literally just open it up into a room and have a play and see where that leads us to. So maybe this time next year we'll come back and tell you what we did. I hope that helps.
Thanks, Anna. Right, we're very nearly out of time. Can't see any more hands. I'm going to quickly ask, have you got any plans? Because it's been amazing to hear about this process and to watch it as one of your critical friends. But it's been very well resourced, which is amazing. Are there any plans to share any of that? I'm just thinking the results of your consultation, your templates. I know there's a portrait flavour, but a lot of what you learned would be applicable much more widely across the sector. Is there any plans to share any of that with peers?
So we do. We have been doing so in an ad hoc kind of way. So I've been, very open to people who've reached out and asked, and talking to people about what we've been through and the data that we've got. I think we are still data gathering at the moment, so I don't think we have anything formal that we can share. But I think once we have a broader reports and things like that, then I think there are plans. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn. I think there are plans to share those more broadly as well.
Yeah, I think there'd be real appetite because it's just fascinating, and the thorough nature of your process has just been amazing to watch. So thank you both. Thank you both for coming and sharing and being so open with us. Let's thank our speakers once more.